Welcome everyone to the Ultimate Interloper Survival Guide. We're going to divide this guide up into 3 stages. The first stage is going to be you going from wherever you spawn to whichever forge you choose. Stage 2 is going to be traveling from the forge and finding yourself a home. Stage 3 is going to be long-term survival. Whether you're a new player and you're struggling to get on your feet in Interloper, or if you're a veteran player and you just want to pick up a few tips, we are going to go into a lot of detail on exactly how you can survive and become a force to be reckoned with. So in the first stage, basically you're going to spawn somewhere random and going to have no idea where it is. If you're on high ground, take a look around, try and find a landmark or road or something like that. Alternatively, if you're not on high ground, just take a road or a river or whatever you can see, any kind of path until you find any kind of landmark or house or building or anything like that. If you're a newbie and you don't know the maps and landmarks well, you can just walk up to any of the landmarks and basically something will pop up on your screen telling you where it is and you can reference that place from the maps. So I would strongly recommend using external maps, but if you want to do the in-game charcoal map sketches, then that's up to you. So I will put some links in the description for alternate maps which show you all the loot and all that sort of thing. The first and most important thing you'll need to do is find either matches or a fire striker. There's a number of locations in the game that will have matches, and there's usually at least one place in each map with matches. You'll most likely need to have a fire within the first day to boil a few liters of water to keep you alive for a few more days. However, if you don't find them straight away, you can get a few liters of delicious toilet water in most bathrooms to keep you going until you do find the matches. Next step is going to be your clothing and sewing kits. So before going to forge your weapon, you'll need to prepare for the journey. This means being able to make a lot of distance without losing health to freezing temperatures. To do this, you'll need all the clothing and sewing kits you can find. Generally, the best places to do this are any houses or other indoor areas. The easiest place to get cloth is curtains, and you don't need any tools for this. You should be fixing up each new piece of clothing and continuing to maintain clothing throughout the game. So your next big step is going to be the hammer. This is much rarer than any of the other items we've talked about so far, so instead of looking directly for the hammer, it's best to take a different approach. Essentially, you want to use the maps to figure out how to get to either Forlorn Muskeg or Desolation Point's Forge. At this point, you can take as long as you need to get there, but it's incredibly important to keep moving and loot everything along the way. If you stay anywhere for too long, you will deplete the resources in that area, such as cattail, wood, rabbits, and deer carcasses. Being that you don't have an axe or anything else at this point, you don't want to stay anywhere too long. It's important that you're picking up sticks from the floor for fire and torches, rocks for hunting rabbits and distracting wolves, and burnable material for your fires. So the next step is going to be the forge. Getting to the forge is difficult enough, but if you want to forge all your tools, you'll need to go the extra mile when preparing, as you will need to sacrifice an entire day just for forging tools without being able to hunt for food, etc. So whenever possible on your journey, you should eat meat along the way, pick up cattails and snacks, and save them for when you're at the forge if you can. If you're not able to do this, there is usually some food in both Desolation Point and Forlorn Muskeg, but much less than other maps, so you really don't want to rely on this. It's also important to bring a few liters of water, as you don't want to end up using all your coal and wood to make cans of water. So, what should you forge? The axe is a must. It should be your first point of call. For this, you'll need 5 scrap metal and 1 piece of cloth. The improvised knife can be very useful, but I don't think it's necessary. While it can cut down your carcass harvesting time, you could just use the axe or hacksaw and not have to worry about the extra carry weight. For this, you'll need 3 scrap metal and 1 cloth. Arrowheads are definitely a must. While you could get away with only making 5 or so, I would strongly recommend making as many as you can. Perhaps 20 or 30, as later in the game you may lose an arrow here or there and you don't want to have to trek all the way back to the forge just to get a few more arrowheads. So here's what you'll need to bring. If you want all of these things, the axe, the knife, and 20 or so arrowheads, you'll need to bring 2 pieces of cloth. Make sure you get this on the way, as both Desolation Point and Forlorn Muskeg have very little cloth everywhere. And make sure you don't accidentally use it to repair your clothes. You'll also need about 15 scrap metal. There's not much scrap metal available, so it's better to bring it before you get to Forlorn Muskeg. Desolation Point has quite a lot, so you could just wait until you're there and harvest it, or alternatively, you could harvest some on the way. For example, if you get caught inside a building during a blizzard and there's metal there, then maybe you could make your time useful and harvest some of that. So with the coal, you need around 15 or so pieces. More is always better if you can carry it. And that should be enough for all of these things. Coal is very easy to find in both locations, so it isn't really worth carrying it to these places unless you're really wanting to bring extra. Okay, so let's talk about some bonus items. It's important to note that the items we've already discussed are necessities, and none of the following items are necessary, but can make your journey a whole lot easier. So first is the bedroll. Make a point of going to bedroll locations, even if they are out of your way, as once you have the bedroll, it becomes a whole lot easier to plan a journey knowing you don't absolutely have to rely on having a bed along the way. The bedroll can mean the difference between life and death when you have cabin fever and need to sleep outside. Next is the hacksaw. The hacksaw might not save your life, but it can make many of the aspects of the game much easier. Having a hacksaw will allow you to harvest frozen, ravaged deer carcasses and save a lot of time doing it. You'll be able to harvest birch and maple saplings, which is very useful for later in the game. And if you are near Timberwolf Mountain and you're willing to risk summiting, you can potentially access a lot of food and clothing by using the hacksaw to saw the locks off crates from the plane, which will definitely pay off long term. Next is the lamp. So the lamp is an incredibly useful tool. Not only will it allow you to navigate through the long, winding, dark caves that connect the maps, but it will allow you to see a lot of the loot that you might have otherwise missed without ample lighting. It's also going to save a lot of frustration when you're trying to figure out where your bed is at 1 in the morning in pitch darkness. So I would definitely recommend carrying this. This is worth its weight in gold. Next is pry bars. Grab one as soon as you can and always carry it with you so that you can open up any locked car boots or any lockers along the way. If you see any stims along the way, always grab them and always carry them with you. When you're on your last legs with depleted health and exhaustion, on the run from a pack of wolves, you don't want to be thinking about where you stashed your stims. And of course the magnifying lens, this can only be used on a sunny day. If you've played Interloper, you'll know there aren't many sunny days, but matches and fire strikes are a finite resource, so it's important to use this as much as possible to save your matches for when you really need them. And books, always take any educational books regardless of the weight. You won't have much free time and you shouldn't be investing much time in research when you get started and when you're still in this stage of the journey, but when you get stuck in a 2-day blizzard and your clothes are already in peak condition, you want to make your time useful and learn some skills, and that will help you survive later on in the game. Although you may only have a little time to read now, you will have much more time to research later in the game, so it's definitely worth hanging on to these. Okay, a few tips for your journey. There's plenty of different tips that I can give you to survive, so I'm only going to say the most basic and important ones. So plan your journeys very carefully and always have a backup plan. At this stage of the game, you'll be traveling a lot, and it's important that you can estimate how far you can get without freezing, running out of energy or food. If a blizzard suddenly strikes and you get mauled by wild animals and you can't make it to your original destination, you should have a backup destination on the way so you can stop and recover. At this early stage with no tools, your only sources of food will be snacks you find, cattail, rabbits, and ravaged deer. Interloper has very little snacks available anywhere, so you shouldn't rely on this. Cattails are excellent and never spoil, so definitely worth picking up a few of these if you can. Don't travel with any meats. Rabbits and deer carcasses are a great source of food, but you should eat them straight after cooking to avoid traveling with them so you don't attract any predators. Alright, stage 2. So this is where you want to find a home base. So the next step, just like going to the forge, is planning your journey. So you've got all your tools, and after a long day of forging, you're probably going to need a long sleep. Once you've rested, chances are all your food and water will be depleted, so it's time to move out of these areas. I would strongly recommend avoiding living in Forlorn Muskeg or Desolation Point, as these areas are filled with predators and lack many of the things that make long-term survival possible, as well as having terrible weather. So next you want to choose where you want to live out your days. Many skilled Interloper players have their individual preferences on where they like to live. A few popular ones are Trappers and the Farmhouse, etc., etc. There's a lot to choose from. So every different location has its own advantages and disadvantages. My personal favorite and recommendation is the camp office on Mystery Lake. I'll elaborate a little more on that later in the video. So, which way to go? There are usually multiple ways to get from one area to another, but I would recommend taking a different way than the way you came and looting everything you can while doing so. That way you can finally get back to your humble abode and you'll have all kinds of extras to help you survive. So make sure you get plenty of maple and birch saplings along the way if you don't have them already. You can easily harvest these with either the hacksaw or you can use the axe that you've just made, whichever you prefer. So the next stage is long-term survival. The first thing you want to do is drop your birch and maple on the floor in your house along with anything else that you want to cure. Once you've arrived in your new home, you'll probably be encumbered from all the loot you found from the journey from the forge. Spend a bit of time figuring out what you'll need to carry on a daily basis, keeping in mind that you won't be traveling nearly as far anymore and you'll be pretty close to your home at all times. For example, if you always keep the hatchet on you for defending yourself and chopping wood, you're not going to need to carry around a 2-kilogram hammer. You won't be able to fit everything into one drawer, so I recommend keeping everything very organized from the start, and this can save you a lot of time when you're finding things later. So assuming you're well fed and healthy after your journey, you'll need to build up 2 piles. Make sure you always have a large pile of excess wood so that you can always boil water, cook, make fires next to animals that you're harvesting to stay warm, and there's always wood available if you need to leave your home due to cabin fever and have a fire out somewhere. You should always keep a large pile of water bottles on the floor as well. This way you can invest days into crafting or hunting loot without having to stop all the time to light fires or boil water. The other benefit of doing this is you will use many less matches. The next step is to craft a bow and arrows. Hopefully by this point your birch and maple is cured. Crafting this will likely chew up a full day. So the next step is hunting. First off, you'll need to figure out which things you need the most. So this will be dependent on what you found previously in the game. So for example, if you haven't managed to find a second hat, you might want to specifically target rabbits first to make a rabbit skin hat. Use the crafting menu to figure out which types of hides that you'll need for which piece of clothing and then go hunting for them. To begin with, you should mostly be hunting rabbits and deer. You should continue hunting rabbits with rocks instead of wasting arrows on them, as the arrows will eventually break. If you decide to use a fire to keep warm while harvesting large animals like deer, bear, and moose, then you should first harvest the meat 1 kilo at a time so you don't end up accidentally skipping time into a blizzard and freezing. Drop the meat away from the fire and harvest the hide and intestines. Pick up the meat and take it all the way back to your base, dropping the meat outside the door and the hides and intestines inside to cure. This will allow your meat to last long periods of time. At this stage, you'll be getting cold quite easily due to your lack of clothing, so the best time to go hunting for deer is during the afternoon when it's warm enough to hunt and harvest without a fire. The moose moves between different areas, so it can be difficult to track down. Rather than going looking for the moose, I generally find it easier to just check the closest moose spots while hunting for deer. When it's finally there, then you can target the moose, but be careful because it is extremely dangerous and you don't want it to break your ribs. So the next step is crafting. Once you've finished getting all the deer, rabbit, and moose hides that you'll need to make your clothes, you should have plenty of meat outside your door and a big pile of water to keep you fed and watered while you invest huge amounts of time in doing this. So the next thing we're going to talk about is cabin fever. At some point during the crafting, it's almost certain that you will get cabin fever. You'll need to grab a whole lot of wood and go somewhere. For example, if there's a cave nearby your home, you can sleep there for a night or two and make use of your time by reading or cooking water. Personally, I like to go to the ice fishing huts near the camp and catch lots of fish while boiling water so I have plenty of food and lantern oil. After hunting, cooking, and eating all those deer and rabbits, your cooking level should be very high by now. If you are at level 5, then you're ready to start hunting wolves and bears. If you haven't yet reached level 5, then you should be using the books you found to increase your levels. If after reading all these books you still don't have level 5 cooking, then don't bother cooking the wolf or bear and stick to deer and rabbit until you hit that level 5, so don't risk getting intestinal parasites. So the process is the same with wolves and bears for hunting. Meat freezes outside, hides and intestines cure inside. You should be able to easily continue doing this if you have everything the game has to offer, but this doesn't mean you need everything. For example, a nice bearskin coat is great and it's going to keep you warm, etc., but I don't find the bearskin bedroll necessary, as the bedrolls you can find are generally much lighter. So what's next? Now with all your new clothes and equipment, you're warm, animals are afraid of you, you have a stockpile of everything, and you're not in any immediate danger of dying of anything. This is where you want to explore all of the maps 100% and make sure you have every bit of loot in the game. I would say it's probably not worth bringing a bow and arrow for this, and it's better to just leave it behind at home. This is a scavenger run, and you want to keep as much carry weight free as possible, which will be slightly easier due to your new moose hide bag. So the next step is surviving permanently. Now you're back at home and you have literally everything in the game, but you're all out of matches, you're all out of sewing kits, and there's no more cattail and no more reclaimed wood. It's just you with a magnifying glass for fires, a bow and arrow for food, and a fishing hook to maintain your clothes. You may even get to the stage where you run out of whetstones to sharpen your tools, which will make the game a whole lot harder. Although there is no end to the game, this is about as complete as it will ever be. If you made it this far, congratulations, most people can't. Keep in mind that Interloper is very difficult in the beginning and gets easier with every step you take. One of the things that has helped me improve my gameplay is streaming. If you've had a hard time in the game, try streaming and people will come on and share their tricks and tips during your gameplay, or alternatively you can watch other people's streams and see how they handle different situations and what tricks they use to survive. If you'd like to watch my stream, you're welcome to join anytime. So my stream is twitch.tv/hardcoregamer555. And you can also check out some of my Interloper playthroughs that I will link here. So thanks very much for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more daily content for the Long Dark and many other games. Also, if you think I've left anything important out of this video, or if this video helped you, please don't forget to let me know in the comment section. So thank you very much once again, and see you guys in the next video.